Hello everyone, welcome back to the next episode of What is Your Marathon podcast. This is Karthik Viswanathan. I'm super excited and I'm thrilled, and at the same time I'm feeling blessed for today's episode because of the guest that I'm going to present to you all in this episode. The reason behind this particular feeling of which I'm having at this point in time is because I'm going to interview one of my mentors in this episode. Right, yeah, that's Tathra Street. Tathra is a powerful paradigm shifter whose work is at the intersection of a personal development and professional development. Right? Her work as a coach, facilitator, consultant is founded in empowering her clients to explore what they know and how they know, rather than just telling the people what to do. Right? And she's also a facilitator of Enterprising Wyndham for 3 consecutive years from 2016, 2017, and 18. And that year, that is 18, is where was the year like I met Tathra for this Enterprising Wyndham program for BibWorld, and she is one of the best facilitators I had ever seen. In this episode, Tathra has touched base a lot of different elements from her life as an environmental consultant, startup mentor, leadership futuristic coach, and entrepreneur by herself, and touching base a lot of topics like understanding the critical factors that inspires the change and what makes the sustainable and inclusive society. And she also touched base about the human-centric leadership and their attributes, right? And we are fortunate enough, like she gave a little bit of sneak peek about her upcoming book about human-centric leadership, and she touched base about the entrepreneurial journey and her moments and time around this Enterprising Wyndham, coaching so many entrepreneurs including myself. And also this episode has got a lot of key takeaways for small medium businesses and also startups from a leadership perspective. And at this point in time, I like to pay my gratitude to Tathra because her podcast episodes, Tall Poppy, is one of my inspirations for me to go about and creating this podcast, What is Your Marathon podcast. Get ready with your notebooks, mental notes, or electronic gadgets, because there are so many golden nuggets this will be coming in this episode. Right? So with this one, I like to present to you all my mentor, Tathra Street. And Tathra, I'm so glad to have you on the show. So Tathra, how are you?
Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. I'm good. Yeah, we're still in lockdown in Melbourne at this stage. Hopefully at some point, maybe, when this is published, that'll be different. But at the moment, that's our reality.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. So, how have you been? And then, I just wanted to jump straight away because I'm very curious about like the things which are brewing at your end, and especially with this the future leaders, and what's that community is all about. What's this brewing there? Like, could you please take us to the journey about it? Yeah.
Yeah. So at the moment, I guess my latest project is what I'm calling Lead the Future. And it's a community of people who want to have conversations that matter. I think a lot of us are experiencing, well, isolation as we are in lockdown. It's kind of loneliness was a pandemic before coronavirus was, and now with lockdown, it's amplified that. And so sometimes it's difficult for us to find opportunities to have conversations that matter. And I know that I've found that for myself as well. And so I've created this burgeoning community of people who want to talk about things like leadership and what it means to lead the future, to take responsibility for who we are at this moment in history. And we have such an opportunity to really create something different. And so my hope is that we'll be able to talk about that and what that means, and what it means conceptually, but also what it means on a practical level for us as human beings, again, just to be alive at this time in history.
Wow, that's great. That's such a profound thinking, Tatra, because you're trying to create an opportunity for people to be heard, and then to be making their voice heard, and then making their opinions just evaluated. And then with the leadership thing, it just goes a long way in the community building. And then especially I really think personally it is just such a good initiative, especially with this pandemic thing. And then you rightly put up earlier, like saying that isolation has always been there for a while, but in this condition, in this financial crisis and economic crisis and the health crisis, this is so much initiative. So I'm so thrilled about this particular thing. And I always believe like these kind of initiatives should be just coming out of some passion somewhere. Like what's the drive behind this? Like how you end up, like how Tathra Street is just coming into this particular episode of life.
Well, I mean, okay, so the longer story of it is that, you know, my background in environmental sustainability led me to be curious about what it is that inspires change in human beings, and what you know, how we can create a sustainable future. And so in my work as an environmental consultant, I got to see kind of firsthand what inspires change and what doesn't. And what I realized is that it's, in some cases, it's not things like altruism and a desire to make a difference. It's sometimes it's, you know, at least as an environmental consultant, what I could see is that there are commercial realities that inspire people to you know, recycle to save money, etc. But you know, in my work since then, and since I have been, you know, working for myself, what I could see is that, you know, a big part of what makes us human is our need to connect and our desire for a sense of belonging. And I think those are critical factors in what inspires change and what inspires us to follow the lead of others, and also to be the leader and to be the one who goes out on a limb and, you know, is the tall poppy and is the one, you know, sticking their neck out going, I think we should go this way, and risking, you know, being vulnerable and, you know, risking ostracism, risking, you know, shame and embarrassment, you know, to suggest something different, to do, you know, to go there, to tread off the beaten path. But, you know, when we can go together, we can go further.
Absolutely, that's right.
Yeah.
We go together, we go further. And then you rightly pointed out, like the just like understanding the risk and then talking and questioning the status quo, like if it is not really the status quo that needs to be, that's a sign of a leadership, the thing that I am just learning from you there. That's good.
Well, I mean, yeah, the status quo is there for a reason, and we have worked hard to establish what it is. But anytime we create a solution to a problem, we create tomorrow's problems. And so we're recognizing the unintended impacts of the systems and the society that we've created. And now we are starting to see the real cracks of that, and there are aspects of our society that we know are not sustainable and not inclusive, and that's, you know, not going to lead us down a path to anything good. And that in order to really come through what we're experiencing on this planet right now in any way that is going to create, you know, inclusivity and sustainability, it's so important for us to really look at, well, who are we being on this planet right now, and how can we lead the way to a different future, to one that is sustainable and inclusive, and that leads us to a greater sense of fulfillment and a legacy that we can be proud of to pass on to future generations.
Good. All right. So that puts up a nice perspective about like who the futuristic leader would be. So can you just share among for the listeners or to benefit or for my own benefit, like what are the key attributes that from your perspective the leader should be having, or the key attributes that this futuristic leader should be having, which is close to your heart?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've written a yet to be published book on what I think of as modern leadership, you know, human-centered leadership. And it's very much about inspiring people to act from a place of care.
Place of care.
Yeah, because often leaders will, you know, people in positions of authority and power will abuse that power by inspiring fear and hate, and inspiring people to act from that place, and that's not going to lead anywhere good. It's leading us to where we are, and that direction is not one that will be sustainable or will include the people who are going to come up with the solutions that we need for today. And again, you know, it'll be the next generation that'll be going, okay, well, those solutions created a problem that that we are now facing, and you know, we don't know what those will be, but we can only act with what we know at the moment and what we can see coming. And so some of the so I identified 8 skills and 4 mindsets that I believe are fundamental to human-centered leadership.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
And some of those mindsets include being future focused, really looking at what's coming, what we can anticipate from both the technology and you know, human trends, etc. Another is the entrepreneurial mindset, and so that's being able to see opportunities and to seize them and to you know, bring ideas into fruition. Another one is an innovation mindset, so one that really looks at, you know, doing things differently and not needing to adhere to the status quo. And the last mindset is collaborative, being able to work together. Okay. So like I was saying before, you know, when we can work together, we go further, and together we are a genius, you know. And so things that are close to my heart as far as attributes of a leader would be a willingness to be inspired, a willingness to see what's going on in the world, and not just the things that are negative or difficult, but the things that are also inspiring and positive, that, you know, we've made such great strides in terms of reducing things like poverty and illness. And, you know, that's not making the news, because it's not, you know, what makes the news is not the things that promote an inclusive and sustainable society. It's what, you know, divides us and is you know, the things that are wrong. And unfortunately, the way our minds work is that that bad is stronger than good. So when bad things happen, it leaves a big impression. When good things happen, we need basically at least 10 good things to make up for that bad thing. And that has massive implications for things like, you know, education, information, relationships, business.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So for me, what is close to my heart are things like inspiration, innovation, connection, belonging. Yeah. And those are all innate in all of us. And my belief is that we are all leaders, that we all have the capacity to lead and to do things differently and to inspire people from a place of care. But that's not how we relate to leaders at the moment. That's not how we relate to leadership. We think it's someone else. We think it's the person at the top of the food chain or the top of the hierarchy. And it's not. It's all of us.
Yeah, this fact like that, I just hit really hard on my face with it, because that's a fact. Like, everyone is a leader, and then everyone has got this attributes within us. It's just purely like, we need to realize that one, and then in terms of getting this from a place of care, that's what it's really inspires a lot. That's really good. And thank you so much for also just giving a sneak peek about your book, and then talking about the 4 different mindset about like entrepreneurial and future focusing and collaborative and innovation. It just yeah, thank you so much. And then I'm so looking for your book once it's getting published. Yeah,
so me too. It's been a while, but I think sometimes these things take time.
They take time. Yeah. I know also, like earlier, like you were just mentioning about like creating your own entrepreneurial journey. So could you please touch base, like what's that thing, and then who are all your, what's it? Is it like a business thing, or is it a one-on-one coaching thing? So what's that for the benefit of the audience? Like,
yeah, so I have a background in environmental sustainability, and I had an I guess an aspiration to become an environmental consultant, and I achieved that. And when I was in that role, I was, you know, I was thrilled. I was at the top of my game. I was really happy. I was really could see that environmental sustainability was becoming an industry in and of itself, and I really couldn't even keep tabs on all of the developments and the you know, new directions that it was taking. And that was actually really exciting for me. I was like, wow, there's actually a lot of people doing lots of great work on things that I have no idea about, and that's awesome. And then you know, a number of events meant that I had a realization that I didn't want to provide operational advice anymore, and that I wanted to move into a bit more of a strategic space, and leadership was something that really captivated my interest. And one of the things that really stood out for me when I was an environmental consultant was when I was doing things like implementing a recycling program. Sometimes in the tenancies that we would be, doing this work in, there would be, the manager or a practice leader or someone that was sort of at the top of the, the organization that would say things like, it's all right if you remove everyone else's rubbish bin and replace it with a recycling bin, but just leave mine, I'll just do my own thing. And I just realized that, there was this need for leadership and sustainability to come together in a way that it didn't occur to be.
Right. Okay.
And I was like, I'm going to bring sustainability to leadership. And I had these massively naive ideas about what the heck I was going to do. And, I left my secure job and I went out on a limb and I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Wow. Okay.
I made a lot of mistakes. I fell on my face a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from that. I learned about how to do business and how not to do business. I learned how to promote my work and how not to promote my work, and what some of the key assumptions that I made that, I didn't realize I needed to do, like recognizing what my unique selling point was and what was different about what I was bringing to the industry and who my customer was. Like I had no idea about any of that when I started.
Right. Okay.
And I got to a point about 5 years in where people started asking me for business advice. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what are you thinking asking me for advice? I haven't got a clue.
Right.
But then I realized I actually had learned a few things along the way. And then I did a couple of workshops for people who were wanting to start businesses or had a business idea. And then I ended up working for the Center for Multicultural Youth doing the Enterprising Wyndham program, which is where I met you.
Yeah.
And I was able to bring my experience starting my own business, my facilitation skills, and some of the subject matter experts in the community and the mentors from that community together to create an experience for 3 cohorts of individuals who are starting businesses in the Wyndham area. And that was amazing. We really got to, as you know, to really activate the entrepreneurial spirit of that community. And that was amazing. And there were
Yeah, that's really good because you bundle up all the things like from your own, the domain expertise of your sustainability, and then your passionate about like making the changes, and then getting on to your own self-entrepreneurial journey, and then taking those lessons and also those successes, and then teaching others the things. So that's a really good, impressive story. Like now I can just say like, yes, it is really good story for this one, but obviously I would just think there will be a lot of core challenges that what you have faced, like as you were saying about like selling the different things and the thing. Like, how did you able to pull those up? Like, what are the things that you used to, or the tools and mechanisms for? Because many of my listeners are entrepreneurs, as you know. So, what are the techniques that you use, or the mindset that you use to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, look, it was really difficult, especially in the beginning, because my background was so entrenched in the environmental sustainability space. Like I didn't have any credibility around leadership. And I've built that over 10 years, thankfully, and people do recognize me for my leadership development skills. But it took a really long time to establish that. And I think some of the practices are things like putting yourself out there and, whether it's writing articles, blog posts, doing interviews, starting a podcast, now I'm doing more, Facebook Lives and interviews with different people to kind of address the divisiveness that we experience in society and help us to understand each other. But there are other practices like, meditation and yoga and, just waking up early and having time to myself in the morning, writing, doing morning pages, which is a practice from the Artist's Way that I did years ago. I think, the more that we can connect to ourselves at the start of the day, the more we can bring our best selves to the day and to navigate the highs and lows. I guess another practice for me that is important is connecting to a sense of purpose and really being curious about, my why. And so what I'm really clear about now is that my purpose is to change the face of leadership.
Yeah.
And my why is to create an environmentally sustainable, socially just, and spiritually fulfilling human existence on the planet. And that comes from some work that I did years ago with an organization called Be the Change Australia, which is in partnership with the Pachamama Alliance out of the US. And they had what they called the Awakening the Dreamer, Changing the Dream Symposium. And that was its purpose as well. And for that to be the guiding principle of our time. And the short version of that today is to create an to create an inclusive and sustainable future. Because with the current paradigm of leadership that we have, that's not where we're headed. And that's why I'd like to see, more people like you, people like the ones that I interview, people like, there's in your community, one of the people who inspires me the most is someone I think of as the future mayor of Wyndham. And that's Mehek Sheikh, and she's really shaking things up with the election right now, and I'm really excited to see her put her name forward to be in the, I think it's Chafee Ward. Because I think she is the future of leadership, absolutely, and she is changing the face of leadership, and people like yourself as well. Like, I love what you've done with the marathon. Looking at what is the question of what is the marathon that each of us are running. It's just brilliant.
That's good. That's good. That's really thing. And then for audience, like Tathra was mentioning about her podcast, like Tall Puppy. So that's one of my inspirations for me to just start off this podcast, that what you're listening into. So thank you, Tathra, for this, for that wonderful opportunity, for letting me to hear your podcast. So that's a great achievement. And there were such a profound golden nuggets of information about your techniques and the things. And then you also touched base about the leaderships and the entrepreneurship with this enterprising Wyndham thing. So with this enterprising Wyndham, I really enjoy the time over there. So with that startup community, when just looking from new businesses, the budding entrepreneurs, from their perspective, sometimes the leadership would be thinking around, the policymakers would be thinking around at like a very different level. So how can we connect? Like, what are the things that you could able to just suggest for the startup community, business owners, so that they can convert themselves as the leaders in their own field?
Absolutely. So we are living through incredibly turbulent times, and not just from the pandemic. The waves of disruption around, whether it's technology or just different business models like, Airbnb and Facebook. And, these are organizations that are really disrupting the traditional business model. And we are existing far more online than the whole brick and mortar is, in serious risk of being disrupted. And education, healthcare, every industry is basically, facing disruption at the moment. And the opportunity is that it is the startups, it is the small business, that's where big business starts. Everyone has their start in someone's garage, picnic table, kitchen table, whatever it is, back of napkin, business planning. Like, it all starts with the idea of an individual person, and then when they talk to someone else about it, and that person can hear it in a way that lights up, bringing it into reality, and it's an exciting time to be in the startup community. There are so many opportunities, and my belief is that small business and the startup community is the backbone of, not just the the potential employment. At the moment in Australia, we are facing the largest unemployment situation in 20 years, and who is it that's going to change that? It's going to be small business. It's going to be startups. And I don't think that the small business and startup communities recognize the power that they have, and the impact that they have on our economy, on our society, on the potential employment marketplace. That's where the power is. Sure, there's big business and big institutions that in many ways dominate and kind of set the tone, but they are responding to the challenge that small business and startup community issue to them.
Yeah. Okay.
And if they don't, they will crumble.
Mm.
If they don't respond to the wave of disruption, they will crumble. And we are seeing that. We are seeing massive organizations, just not responding well to the changes that are happening. So yeah, I really think that now is an amazing time to be a business leader. And when I say business leader, I mean anyone who starts their own business.
Okay.
Anyone who does things differently, anyone who maybe works for a small business or a startup and says, hey, what about this? Why don't we do it this way? And asks that question. Do things differently.
Definitely, with this adapting to the current environment and thinking the thought leadership. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then just following up on that particular thing, like if at all, like if we want to, if say a small business owner or a startup person wants to improvise their leadership qualities or the skills, like what are the tips that you're able to share with us?
So my belief is that we all start where we are with what we have with the people around us.
Right.
And one of the fundamental pillars of leadership is self-awareness. And when we take the time to reflect, when we take the time to ask why, what is my why? Why am I doing this? Why do we do it this way? The answer of we've always done it this way is not going to cut it.
Yeah. Correct.
We need to know what the original intention was, and is that still relevant today? So challenging, questioning, critical thinking, and asking ourselves, where do I fit into this? How can I take responsibility for changing the future? How can I take responsibility for the conflict in front of my face? Like how am I responsible for the things that are occurring in a way that are not in line with the impact that I intend? There's this thing called the intent impact gap, and that is a massive blind spot for many of us. And it's things like feedback, giving and receiving feedback. Those are very critical skills. And setting boundaries, creating safety by having a scope, the parameters for what's okay and what's not okay, and really navigating that, having those difficult conversations. Those are three areas that I do workshops in, and support people to develop those skills and a language around, well, what does it mean to set boundaries? And how can I do that in a way that is respectful? How can I enforce those boundaries when they get crossed, and identify what the consequences are in a way that is leaves people with a sense of being respected and respectful. So yeah, that's a start. I really think so. And I guess the last one I want to leave you with is, in terms of self-awareness, what are the things that cause us stress, and how do we respond to stress? When we're aware of our own stress responses, when we're aware of our own triggers, the things that mean that we end up doing things that we often take our stress out on other people when we don't realize it. When we can become aware of that, that makes us a better leader. And that makes us easier to be around, and better to work for as well, and work with.
Okay, good. So it becomes a snowballing effect of me passing on to the next one, and then the next person to the other person. So it just goes up and then creates a mess at the end. So that's what.
Yeah, our lack of self-awareness has a ripple effect, and our self-development and our increased self-awareness also has a ripple effect, and more the ripple effect that you want, rather than the ripple effect that you can't see and don't realize, that is creating that wide intent impact gap. To narrow it, you ask for feedback, you give feedback, you set boundaries, and you have difficult conversations.
Right. There you go, my dear audience. Those three key things: the feedback, like giving and receiving it, and then just setting the parameters, like what you can control, what you could just say yes, and what you could not say yes or say no, and then eventually having the difficult conversation with confidence. So such a wide variety of these things, but are also important of getting the business. Any business, I think, like it will be applicable, right? Any
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, now I'm just thinking, I'm just as you're speaking, like I'm just currently thinking about like whether it can be a brick and mortar business, or it can be a service industry, or it can be an IT based, technology based application, or yeah, it can be yeah, anything you name it.
Yeah, I mean, my theory is that anytime you get human beings together, you're going to have issues. And
Absolutely.
that's, I mean, in the work that I do as a leadership coach, and I work with people to work through their people challenges. And, so I support emerging leaders and like new managers, people that have a great subject matter expertise, but don't necessarily have a lot of training or skills in, those soft skills that are actually really hard.
Right. Yes, it's really hard.
But as we commit to practicing things like human-centered leadership, self-awareness, collaboration, giving and receiving feedback, all of that helps us to have a positive ripple effect and to be more effective as leaders.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, talking about, like you mentioned about like bringing people and then doing the things, and that'll be like problems, and then there'll be also some joy moments that I would believe. So about like, because the moment as I was saying in the beginning, like I met you as a mentor at Enterprising Wyndham. So talk about that your experience of those 3 years, 3 cohorts, and what are your key cherishing moments from the.
Oh yeah, loved it. I loved that I got to learn about what it takes to help people to, like, what are the key skills that people need when they're starting a business? What environment do they need? What kind of support they need, like mentors? And the peer education component, like learning together, learning to, again, give each other feedback. I loved that I came away with that with a real sense of, wow, okay, now I have a bit of an idea of what it really takes when you're doing education around entrepreneurship, incubators, accelerators, etc. So I feel like I have an expertise not just to facilitate, like there are aspects of it that I can teach myself, but I also know that I can draw on others' knowledge and expertise in the areas that I don't necessarily have a level of knowledge that I'm comfortable, passing on, and to work with others in the community to really draw on those skills. One of the key cherishing moments for me was, I can't remember what year it was, but it might have been the second year where we had the graduation ceremony, and I was invited to come up and just say a few words, and I didn't know what I was going to say, and people, the participants were kind of like, pitch, because I had been working with them the whole, 12 weeks or whatever, 13 weeks or whatever it was, to cultivate their own pitch for their own business. And so I was like, I don't know what my pitch is, and so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to speak from my heart.
Right.
And I talked about how much of a privilege it was to really work with people to activate and enliven the entrepreneurial spirit of that community. And it just meant so much to me to be part of that journey with all of you. And I learned so much about so many different things. And I got a standing ovation.
Oh, very good. So
and it just, I just have such, it is honestly one of the highlights of my career.
That's great.
It just will stay with me forever. It was such a beautiful moment, and to be recognized in that way, but also to just be part of that community and part of that journey was amazing.
You did really, really great in getting all those aspects together. So like on behalf of everyone, I take this opportunity and then take a moment to just really thank you from my bottom of my heart, to just not only for my cohort, but also for all the cohorts. That's right. Thank you so much, because those times, like it just, like as you were mentioning, like I met people like from different walks of life, from different phases in their business career. They were just coming, okay, what to do with the business, or I'm having an idea, or I'm having an established businesses, or I'm having a problems with my businesses. I just all mingling it together, and then you facilitated well in terms of those sessions. Whether whatsoever there's a problem, you did facilitate it, but also like you brought down all your experiences from your past. So and also you shared all your gifts, that whatever you got. So that's the thing. So that's not like, it's not a course like that I go just and attend and come back and then say I got some notes. So it's just more than the notes that I got out of the session. So of all this. Thank you.
That's lovely to hear that, because yeah, for me it was definitely more,
Yeah.
it was about more than the content and more than the people in the room. We created something greater than ourselves, and that was powerful.
Yeah, and till now, like till today, like I'm just being in connection with those people. So that's the thing. It just,
me too. I mean, there's
yeah.
lots of people from that community that I'm still in touch with. I mean, yourself being one of them.
Great. So that's the thing. That's the beauty of it, right? It just creates the cohesion, and then that's also in lines with your principles of creating this leadership community, like creating an opportunity to just come back and just share the things and then lead the way. So that's really good. So I know you are a powerful leader and an impactful leader. So in your mind, like if you just look back, like who are the role models or some influences from your perspective, like who you look up as an impactful leaders?
So a historical figure that I've been quite inspired by is Joan of Arc, because she was someone who really just went with her conviction and defied gender roles and was like, I'm doing this because I believe in this. Another person who really inspired me, oh man, I'm blanking on her name at the moment. Helen Caldicott. She is an advocate for basically life on the planet. She wrote there was a documentary I saw, I think it must have been in the 80s, called If You Love This Planet. And it was identifying the threat of the nuclear power and nuclear proliferation. And in the 80s, that was the first time human beings had the power to literally obliterate the entire planet and to grapple with that. And what does that mean? And her perspective as a doctor, with the intent to protect life, to preserve life, to create healthy human beings. And, when humans have the capacity to kill ourselves and everybody on the planet, that was pretty huge. And her asking those big questions really inspired me, and perhaps that's where I get the inspiration to ask some of the big questions as well. Currently on the political scene, I would say AOC is definitely one of my inspirations. Her sort of humble origins and her, again, strength of conviction and just like, speaking truth to power and getting into the halls of power. And I just have a lot of admiration for who she is and the generations of women and young people that she will inspire in terms of changing the face of leadership. She's doing it. And I know Mehek also is inspired by her as well. And so, yeah, it's... And honestly, Mehek is one of the leaders that I'm inspired by. And I learned so much from her in working with her, both in Enterprise and Wyndham and afterwards. And, we're still really good friends. And I am just, really thrilled for her to be, standing in the election. And really hope that she takes up that she's successful and that she can fulfill on my vision for her as the future mayor of Wyndham.
What a great potential. So yeah, it's really good. So good to see those leaders coming up and then just taking the things and not just by taking just this specific time, but also like doing it for a while. Like it's just not like appearing only today and then showing up, but not just there are leaders like Mehek, like where they are putting themselves out like for a while now and then just sending the message constantly and then from a place of care and love. So that's really
And the thing is, I mean, she's young, so people assume she doesn't have a lot of experience, but anyone who looks at her website and sees the massive list of things that she's been involved with in the community from a really young age, like she's impressive, like seriously impressive. So yeah, I think she'll do really well regardless of the outcome of the election. Wherever she goes from there will be amazing.
It's good. It's good. It's right. So that's good. So you touch base like so many different things, and then I just wanted to bundle up in one single loaded question. So what is your marathon in your life at this point?
Yeah, well, my marathon is changing the face of leadership. That's the long game for me. And that's why I work with people on an individual basis as well as in groups. So, I do leadership coaching to support emerging leaders and especially leaders that don't have traditional opportunities and aren't normally, sort of represented in traditional leadership roles. I also work with people who have a lot of privilege to help them understand their privilege and effective use of power that, it's so easy for us to abuse our power and to use privilege in ways where we don't realize the negative impact. And so I support people to understand that. Changing the face of leadership also for me looks like working as a facilitator to help empower organizations and groups to understand their own collective intelligence. And I think of that as a microcosm of the macrocosm. The more we can make better decisions as small groups, the more that human beings as a species can make better decisions about creating an inclusive and sustainable future.
Great. I like
that's my marathon.
That's great. That's great. I like the way you said microcosm to the macrocosm. It's just like thinking big and acting small. That's really good.
Yeah, I think really having a big vision and looking at what are the practical steps that I can take, what I can be responsible for. That's leadership.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So I mean, you are having like a portfolio kind of a thing from different aspects of sustainability and leadership and entrepreneurship journey. And for the listeners' benefit, like if they want to find you, like where they can find you. So,
well, the one of the few benefits of having an unusual name is that I'm easy to find on social media. So you can, although if you Google Tathra Street, you will come up with lots of real estate in northeastern Australia, because there's a town called Tathra Street, and there's a street in somewhere in Queensland, I think. Anyways, but you can find me at tathrastreet.com. You can also find me on Facebook, on occasionally I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, but that's mostly pictures of flowers and puppies and that kind of stuff. But yeah, and I guess the other place that you can find me is on Podia. So that's where the community that I'm forming on Lead the Future can be found. I don't have a public link for that yet, but if you are interested, feel free to contact me. Kartik can also direct you there because he's part of it as well. So yeah, watch this space for that emerging community.
That's good. So I will just put all the links in the show notes so people can always just come back and reach out to these things. So that's really good. And one last thing, like I'm just taking the the maximum value out of you today for the budding entrepreneurs, like just the first time they had never done any of the business. So that kind of an entrepreneur person with a mindset. So what are the key tips, like the takeaway tips that you can give it to them?
Yeah, three things. One is understand why you're doing what you're doing. And make sure that it's something that you're passionate about, so that your purpose in your business can carry you through the difficult times, because trust me, there are difficult times and you will need to have a real deep connection to the purpose of your business to carry you through that. The second thing is know your customer, know why it's important to them, understanding the problem that you solve for them is so important. It's a problem. It's a way of thinking that's actually really different. It took me years to wrap my head around understanding the problem that I solve and the why and the who for. So I do a bit of a process around why and who for early stage entrepreneurs. And actually in the Podia platform, I've got the why up there at the moment. So that could be a place to start. And the next stage will be looking at who for and understanding the problem that you solve for them, not the assumptions that you make about what you think that they want. So one of the mistakes that we often make as early stage entrepreneurs is, here's my solution. You should love it as much as I do. They're not gonna. You need to really look at it from what is the experience of your customer and how does what you do solve their problem? And until you do that, you're going to struggle. The third thing is get a mentor. at very least have one mentor that is older than you and one mentor that is younger than you. People who are in their 40s and 50s, if you don't have someone who is a mentor that is under 30, you're going to miss out on understanding how people relate to the world as a digital native and as someone who understands kind of the current paradigm of how the world is as far as how we relate to being in the digital world. I think that's really crucial. So don't do it alone, do it with other people. I guess the last thing I want to say is to remember to inspire people to act from a place of care, and for that to be the foundation of your business.
Perfect. That's such a profound thinking. Place of care, that form that as a basement or the foundation for your business, and then that way, like, you can understand, firm up your whys, and then understand your problems, what you're going to solve, and then specialist mentors with the different age groups. Oh, wow, that's a really powerful golden lessons in the short-term crash course, Tathra. So, Tathra, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for all your wisdom and your experience and your anecdotal experiences. So thank you so much, and thanks for your time.
It's been a real pleasure, Karthik. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I love having these conversations.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Wow, that's deep. That's one of the deepest conversations, filled with profound thinking and filled with empathy, from the act of care and all the things from Tathra. So that's we are so glad to have all these nuggets to be spelled out in this particular episode of What is Your Marathon podcast. And thank you, Tathra, for this particular episode, especially the phrase, that the statement that you made, act from the place of care and have this as a foundation for your business. That's one of the golden nuggets that I will treasure forever, right? And thank you so much for all your wisdom, and also for your audience. So hopefully, like, this will be something that you'll be cherishing for time to come, and not only cherishing, but you can always put these thinking, these steps, these points into your own action in creating in your own business or in your own lifestyle, and act from a place of care. All right, so have this as a conversation starter with your family and friends and business colleagues, work colleagues, and please subscribe to this podcast, like, so that, like, whenever I publish a new episode, you could able to listen to this one immediately. And thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are and whatever you're doing, whether you're cooking, whether you're walking your dog, or exercising, or just having a quiet time, or especially listening to this particular episode. So thank you so much all, and keep those dreams alive, and dreams would come true, and enjoy every moment in your life, and share this episode again with your family and friends. Until the next episode, this is Karthik Viswanathan, and bye, and take care. Bye-bye.